It's crazy to think that this used to be one of the most dangerous cities in the entire world. But a lot has changed over the last 30 years, and I'm going to show you what you need to know for traveling Colombia in 2022 in what seems to be the never-ending pandemic. First things first, whether you're watching this video in January or May, traveling right now is really tricky. My goal in this video isn't to persuade you to travel to Colombia or persuade you not to travel to Colombia. It's simply to inform you what you need to travel to Colombia in 2022 as far as COVID restrictions and facts on the ground go. Because the reality is this country is still open as of right now, and people are going to travel here. And if you're gonna travel here, you might as well be an informed traveler instead of an ignorant traveler. To give you this information in the most digestible way that I can think of, I'm gonna break this video up into 3 parts. The 3 segments of this video are gonna be very simple. 1, how to get into Colombia. 2, how to get around Colombia. And 3, how to get out of Colombia. Okay, so there are pretty much 2 ways that you get to Colombia. The first one is you have the full vaccination of 2 shots of Pfizer or the J&J. I know there's a list online of approved vaccinations, but you have the vaccine and you don't need a negative test. You just need the vaccine to get in. That's route 1. Number 2 is that you have part of the vaccine finished. So I assume this means you have 1 of the 2 shots on your card, and you have a negative PCR test within 72 hours of boarding your flight to get to Colombia. But completely unvaccinated travelers are not allowed to enter the country. Now, as far as getting to Colombia, that's basically it for the COVID portion. Although there is one more thing that you'll need to enter the country. There's a form that you have to fill out, which I'll just link down in the description. I don't need to go into too much detail, but you have to have that filled out within 72 hours of boarding as well, and you can't fill it out anytime beforehand. Now, when you get to the airport, make sure you have screenshots of your vaccination card and your physical card. Have a photo of your PCR test if you needed one, and have screenshots of that form that you filled out that's down in the description. Plus, have a photo of your passport. Having photos of all these will save you headaches, and I guarantee that, because at some point in your journey, you're gonna be without connection and getting onto Wi-Fi might be a hassle, but the screenshots are just as good. Okay, that's it for getting to Colombia. Now let's talk about getting around Colombia. Okay, number 2, getting around Colombia. Now the first thing you need to know is that mask wearing and this whole COVID pandemic isn't as politically charged in most of the world, especially in South America, as it is in North America. If you're coming from the US, mask mandates and all of this whole situation has been extremely politically charged, but it's not quite like that down here. If you have somebody at home that's at high risk, you typically wear a mask more often when you're out and about. If you don't, you're a young person and you're just living your life, you don't typically see those people wearing a mask quite as often. Or if you're more health conscious, you wear it. You get the idea. I'm just trying to let you know it's not as politically charged down here as it is in the United States. Now in Colombia, the wearing of masks has been mandated, I think, since the beginning, that you wear them in all public spaces and especially in indoor places. Now the facts on the ground, like what's really happening out here, is that when you're inside, you wear it. Pretty much point blank, period. I would say higher end places and grocery stores and places where you're shopping, there's typically security at the door watching people come in, making sure they're wearing a mask. But the more local and the more remote you get, the less you see that. And when you're in the street, I would say it's about 60-40 to people wearing masks to not wearing masks. A lot of that depends where you're at in the city, how many tourists are around, and what time of day it is. The best advice I can give you for mask wearing in general is just be aware. If you're up at 6 a.m. walking in a neighborhood and there's basically nobody around, you probably don't need to wear it everywhere you go. But do make sure you have one on you at all times. Times you will need it for sure is when you go inside basically anywhere, when you're on public transportation, when you're taking a flight, or when you're taking like a long-term bus. If you walk into the city or the majority of people around you are wearing masks and it's clear to you that you're in the minority if you're not wearing a mask, then put it on. Just be aware of your surroundings. Now, if we back up and look at this whole getting around Colombia in a macro sense, basically everything is open. I haven't had any COVID restriction related problems with getting around the country or doing a specific tourist attraction or going on a trip. Everything is open. For some specific examples, I went to the Catedral de Sal, the Salt Cathedral just outside of Bogotá, which was incredible. It's this underground salt mine and cathedral all in one. It has the biggest underground cross in the entire world. Honestly, this place is a don't miss on my list for Colombia. And in this place, in this salt mine where they have coffee shops and snack bars and stores and a production of places underground, everything was open and running normally. You just had to wear a mask. As far as transit goes, I also haven't had any problems getting around the city, and I've taken planes, boats, tuk-tuks, motorcycles, taxis, Ubers, big buses, local buses, and have had no problems related to COVID. Although some of the buses have been extremely late, that's a different video. And fun fact, Uber and any ride-sharing application is actually illegal in Colombia, but they still get used a lot. I also played Tejo while I was here, the national sport of Colombia, which is literally small triangles filled with gunpowder and a rock that you're trying to throw at the gunpowder and explode them. That's the national sport. It's another do not miss, if I'm being honest. You can't come to Colombia and not play Tejo. Now where you're at, I don't know what the COVID situation looks like. It's different all over the world, but in South America in general, when I was in Peru, it kind of felt the same. And in Colombia, it feels like this culture in this place that's so extroverted and socially centered that they just are refusing to completely shut down while still having restrictions in place. I think this is actually a good point to tell you about the map that I made here in Colombia. And actually go inside because the rain's coming. Those are the homies. That's better. Now, hopefully the construction outside isn't too loud. Now, what I was saying about the Google Maps is I have a saved list from my entire time in Colombia with over 100 recommendations from Cali, Cartagena, Bogotá, Medellin, the north, some of the small beach towns. Every time I go to a new place that I enjoy, whether it's a food hole in the wall spot or a big trip adventure with a guide that I really liked, or something as small as just walking around a quaint, nice, peaceful neighborhood or park, I save it in a Google map and I write a small description of my experience, of ways to save money there, of what you shouldn't do while you're there, and I save it in this list. And you can use this list to help plan where you're going while you're here in Colombia before you get here, or you can use it while you're on the ground, which is my favorite part of this. As far as recommendations on the ground go, this is the best thing I can give you next to actually being here traveling Colombia with you. I also still have a couple weeks left here in Colombia, so I'll be adding locations over the next 3 weeks from Medellin, Cali, and the coffee region. By the time I leave here in a couple weeks, my goal is to have at least 150 recommendations on that map for you. You can check all that down in the description. Now let's get back to getting out of Colombia, because as nice as this place is, you'll probably want to go home. Getting a test here in Colombia usually costs money, but they do typically have at-home services. Now, if you're going back to the US, currently, you can get back into the US with an antigen test or a PCR test, and both of those can typically be done at home. If you can't find somebody to do it at home, there are plenty of resources all over all of the major cities to get a test done there. One tip for this is you could just go to a hostel and ask them who or where they do their tests, because usually at the hostel they have somebody come on a pretty frequent basis to give tests, and even though you're not staying there, they'll probably let you just come and get a test anyways, because providing things like this adds to their business. I would say the same thing for getting home that I said on getting to Colombia. Make sure you take a picture or a screenshot of all the documents that you'll need from Colombia to get back to your home country and have them in an accessible place on your phone. It's just so much easier to have a backup in case you lose the paper version or in case you don't have Wi-Fi or connection. Now, there are just too many countries to tell you exactly what you need for every country to get home, but if you're from the US, you need a test within 24 hours of boarding your flight here in Colombia. So realistically, your only option is going to be getting a rapid or antigen test, which also costs less here in Colombia. So it's kind of a win-win for you. Now, if you're watching this into the future of 2022, make sure you check updates for all of these things. I will link in the description below the website that gives you all of the legitimate government information on getting to Colombia and getting back to the US. Like I said, there's just too many countries to give you the details on getting back to your country, but I'm from the US, so I'm a little bit biased, and I will give you the information on going back to the US. And that's pretty much it. Now you're back home. Those are the basics of what you need to know to travel to Colombia in the tricky COVID traveling climate of 2022. Now, if you did find this video helpful in any way, I'm gonna put 2 videos up right here at the end. One video will be about what not to do when you're traveling Colombia. Like, don't miss the hot chocolate and cheese that they drink together, or miss going to the Salt Cathedral, because that's a must. And another video right here about an epic adventure that I had while traveling Colombia. Again, I'm Ryan Fila, and I hope in 2022 you try to live your limit. Much love, and I'll see you next time.